Yes, we
Right.
got it. It is being live streamed. Let's make sure it's live on the YouTube before we go. There we go. There we go. All right, we are good. And let's get this puppy rolling.
There.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of What's on Second, a true baseball podcast. It is Richie and Michael. We are back in the booth yet again, back in our respective homes, back from vacations. We're going to talk about your vacation because you at least got to see a live baseball game, Michael. But what's going on, buddy? How you doing? How was your trip?
Well, the trip was good. All the stuff that we got to go do and see. I got to take my girlfriend around Ohio and where I grew up. Got to take her to my second home where I got my nice new hat here that the YouTube is seeing. And then that you guys will obviously see on some of the posts. But it was a great trip, minus the hiccup on Saturday night and my patience being tested. But
well, his patience is being tested. Wow, I've never heard of a Cleveland Guardians fan whose patience is tested.
well, so when you get sandwiched in between your girlfriend, who is from Detroit, the Detroit area, and another Tigers fan on your other side,
Oh no!
and
Oh no!
oh yeah. I mean, now granted, my grandfather was on my left, girlfriend was on the right, and then there was a Tigers fan on my grandfather's other side, and I mean, the guy was nice. He just, because my team didn't perform so well against the Tigers, my nerves were a little shot. And my girlfriend, being the queen that she is, every time Detroit would get a hit or something, would go right in my face.
But
And
you
it
did have her
was
in Guardians gear. I will say that you did enough to get her in gear.
because she is a saint and a better person than I am. Because there are a few Tigers things I would wear, like, Hank Greenberg, some of the old time Tigers people. Honestly,
Sure.
I would probably wear something Miguel Cabrera
I was
because
gonna say, come on, you gotta have a
you
Miggy.
gotta
Yeah,
have
he's the nicest
Miggy.
guy in the
So
world.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why is he's so nice. Um, but yeah, no, we had a great time, and I'm happy to be back. I know she'll be checking in here soon, probably as a viewer and then a listener eventually.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I will first and foremost, before we jump into asking what the lineup card is from you, sir, I will first and foremost apologize because obviously last episode, in case people are wondering if they do not subscribe to our YouTube, they're probably wondering why have we not seen that last episode? Well, that's because it became YouTube exclusive because yours truly had technical issues and forgot to have the recording so we could take the audio. So it is up on our YouTube. It was live. It was a very good show, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It was an on the road show for me because I was dog sitting at my parents' house. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we did get to do a nice show. So please go check it out on our YouTube. It was a lot of fun. I made Michael have to guess the all MLB teams who we thought who they were going to be. He did a pretty darn good job. So highly recommend. Go back and take a listen to it. This episode, I promise you, is set as should be, and we will not have that issue. So while we are live on the YouTube as we speak right now, we also are going to put this out on our normal recording platforms.
Absolutely. I'm going to keep it in there because every time Richie hits the record button, I'll get an audio clip of some chick saying recording in progress. I heard it and I went, so I'm going to keep that in the pod before you heard Richie give the usual, what's going on? So that is the cue of it's working this week.
And the cue that Richie did not totally screw it up. So we're very pleased to see that Richie was able to get it right this time. But Michael, what do we have on the lineup card today, my friend?
Today it's going to go back to what our probably general format's going to look like in the season next year because I mean, spoiler alert, we're not going anywhere anytime soon, and we are getting into the dog days of the 2023 season. So the normal format is going to generally be a high and low to lead off the episode, and then just go into a finale segment with Bach Talk. We will have some episodes that are just going to be Bach Talk related because they accumulate, and we can't saturate an entire episode with 40 Bach Talks because as we've
We'll be
gotten
here
more
all
used,
day.
we'd be here all day. We're getting more used to this segment and really kind of finding our groove about it. So the more that we do it, we're going to talk more. We ramble. It's fantastic. Y'all are going to get bored. Not really, because we're that entertaining.
We are
But
entertaining. Absolutely.
but no, we want to have at least a little bit of structure here for you guys, so you know what to expect week in and week out. So for this episode, high and low to lead off, like what we did before, although it's been a hot minute since we've done it, and then finish off with a
Very
block
much
talk
so.
segment. But
Very much so.
Richie, I think you've got yours really set in stone here, and you're ready to go. Lead us off. Who are you? What team or player are you high on? And then what team or player are you low on?
Well, let's go high first, because we like to start with good news rather than bad
Yeah.
news. And we're going to start with good news. And it's actually funny because if you go back earlier in the year, this team was actually on my low list for a little while. But like I told them, there's a very easy way they could turn this around, and they've done it. And that's what we ask for. You listen to the show and you take my advice, and then I will lead you to the promised land of the playoffs. Team I'm high on is the Seattle Mariners right now. Probably the hottest team in the league, I would say right now.
Yeah.
In their last 10, they are 9-1. They have won 3 straight as a streak recently. So they just swept out recently and are welcoming Oakland in right now. But the biggest thing that I think is the most important of this whole turn of events is they now lead the AL West. We talked about Texas and Houston battling this thing out. We did not have Seattle really coming into the fray of things. You had them really in the thick of the wild card. And I said, I don't know, could be. They woke up. They're here. It's a real deal thing. J-Rod has become J-Rod of old. It's like a year and said, oh, okay, I'll break records again. He's hitting out of. They let go of a bona fide closer. Granted, they have Munoz, who is their real closer, but they let go of a bona fide closer to make room for Munoz to really cement himself in the role. But they let go of Paul Sewell to Arizona, which has worked out well for Arizona as well. This is a good deal for deal situation. One of the rare times that both sides win. And all of a sudden they have taken off. And the scarier part of this, they're 9-1 in their last 10. They start a series tonight as we record on August 28th against the Oakland Athletics. If I'm Houston and Texas, I'm worried. I'm already down a game to these guys, and they're going against the weakest team possibly ever created. So a team that's is 7 games away from already having 100 losses, and we're not even in September yet. So they're not going to make that mark yet, but it's darn close. So we give them a lot of credit here. But Seattle is my hot team of the week. Their run differential now is plus 102, which is crazy. All their advanced metrics also, their expected win-loss, now this is a stat that kind of takes all their things into account, actually has them being a game better than they are right now. So they're actually expected win-loss is actually 75-55. They're actually right now 74-56. But you talk about teams that have, Texas was cruising for a while there. Houston was nipping at their heels, and now all of a sudden Seattle is coming into play. And the AL West, which we thought was a 2-team race, maybe a 3-team race if the Angels got their stuff together, has since become a 3-team race with Seattle now raising their head. We told you the only thing they needed to do was get the bats going. The bats are here. Welcome. Seattle very well could be back in the playoffs again, which, a couple weeks ago, we were almost counting them for dead. So I apologize, Seattle fans. This was my fault that I said something that they were low before, but they listened and now they've rebounded. You're welcome. I'm here for you.
It's a happy crow to eat.
It's a happy crow to eat. I mean, it's almost as much as the crow I had to eat for the whole Tampa Bay thing, but not nearly as bad. Michael, who's your hot team or player this week?
So my hot player is, I got to go with Mookie Betts. I mean,
good choice.
Not that Mookie is ever, maybe he started this year a little under what he's done in the past. I don't know. He didn't have a bad year to begin with, but he has honestly made more of a conversation than anything in the MVP race. You know, a month ago, the last time we did a high and low segment, if we would have talked about the NL MVP, we both would have been like Ronald Acuna, good, we're good, let's move on.
Yeah,
No need to talk about it. But now, I mean, if I think it's now to that point where if the season ended today and they gave out awards and they said, you know, Acuna was winning it, you say, yeah, absolutely, with the year he's had. If they say Mookie's going to win it, yeah, absolutely. Look how his year went. You know, it's no longer just a one-man show for this award. It's at least a two-man show. However, if you go to MLB.com and just go to their stats point, Acuna is down to the 5 spot with teammate Matt Olson above him in terms of just statistics, general offensive statistics. Freddie Freeman in number 3, the 3 hole, and then Mookie in the number 2 slot. So at this point, as of Monday, August 28th, he's got 483 at bats, 110 runs, 152 hits, 36 doubles, 1 triple, 35 home runs, 93 RBIs. He's walked 73 times. He struck out 88. Not the worst, not fantastic, but it is
better than Schwarber,
without a doubt. He's got 10 stolen bases, only been caught 3 times, and a 315 average, 407 OBP, slugging percentage of 611, and an OPS of 1.018. So he is just amped it up to the nth degree. What's really going to keep, you know, the Dodgers in the discussion of kind of like we've said before, they're back to being the Dodgers, what we know them to be. They're 12 games up on Arizona, who's in second place. So I think at the end of the day, if Mookie wasn't there, I don't think it would drastically alter how the Dodgers were doing, but he's the reason, on top of Freddie and the pitching that they've had and just how that team's played, that they've been like, okay, yeah, we gave Arizona a shot to think they could win the division, but we're the kings of this race. So my high player is Mookie.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but the series just alone at Boston was just outrageous. I think he was 7 for 15, if I remember reading that correctly, with a homer and some stuff. It's
really cool,
wild
when they gave him that long ovation, though.
Yeah, and it was almost every day they gave him some sort of ovation in his first at bat. Because obviously not every Red Sox fans goes into every game, but you know, it was nice to see him get an ovation every single time. And the Dodgers showed, again, they know how to play the trade deadlines right. And, you know, all the moves they've made has worked so far with that. So definitely a big thing. So we're on to the lows. Shall
what do you got
we?
for your low?
My low is still out on the West Coast. I'm back on the West Coast. I'm on a West Coast trip, as it were, with my highs and lows this week. But my low this week is a team that I really didn't think we would have to have this discussion about, because I thought they would be pretty much smooth sailing the rest of the way, but they've fallen off the map and hence have, if the playoffs were to start today, fallen out of the playoffs, and that is the San Francisco Giants. I had pegged them 2 weeks ago into being a almost guaranteed wild card slot. I figured we'd had 4 teams battling for the last 3. That has since changed. The Giants are 3-7. They have just recently won their last game, but they are falling off a cliff right now, and now come into a most important series starting tonight against the Cincinnati Reds, which they are luckily the home team, which is going to definitely help them in this situation. But the pitching for them is awful. Take out Cobb and take out I'm blanking. Logan Webb. Take out Logan Webb and Cobb, and they have nothing in the back end. They had they had a series against the Phillies where they could have been like able to like cut the gap, control their destiny, even fight for that top wild card spot. they should have been swept. They took two out, they took one, they stole one out of the game, but losing 2 out of 3 to Philadelphia, never good. They've lost to just an abundance of teams recently that are all in the playoff run in that way. They have fallen out of the top 3 of the wild card. Now it is, as if it were to end today, it would be Philadelphia, Arizona, and Chicago. I'm sorry, Philadelphia, Chicago, Arizona. Let's get it in the right order. But, all things considered, again, I looked at that lineup. There's nothing that really makes me fear that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gabe Kapler's trying to string it together, and I think that they're a good team. They're definitely not competing for the West anymore. Like, they fell out of that a long time ago, but now they look like they've almost given up on the division. It's funny with Gabe Kapler to me, and I think Gabe Kapler's a very interesting manager. He obviously never worked in Philadelphia for very obvious reasons. He was way too radical for the times he was here.
Yeah.
But I think he's a guy that tries to be too smart for the game rather than let the game come to him. He's a very analytical person. Again, there's nothing wrong with analytics. There's nothing wrong with using that advantage to your advantage if you can do it. But there's a lot of games where they use openers and things like that, which just taxes out your bullpen, which then if you don't have Weber, if Weber Cobb have a bad game, which is bound to happen, they're not superheroes. They're going to have bad games too. They get hit, then the bullpen's depleted, then you have nothing on the back end. And I would be very worried if I was San Francisco, because the one thing I saw when they played against Philadelphia and recently everybody else, their closer, Camilo Doval, is not trusting his heat. He threw, so that last game where they won in extra innings against the Phillies, they should never have gotten to extra innings. It was a 3-run lead going into the final bottom of the 9th, and Harper hits a tying home run, all because he threw nothing but sliders. So finally, Harper just sat on a slider because he realized he wouldn't throw anything hard. He threw 9 straight breaking balls to guys that, don't get me wrong, those top of the order hitters are good against fastball, but when you have 100+ stuff, I think you can tease it a little bit. And even if you throw it out of the zone just to change eye level, it would make your slider more effective. But yeah, he blew a game and then he blew a second one. Luckily that one didn't cost his team a win, but Camilo Doval, big problem if I'm the Giants. If I'm not getting the same guy, it almost looked like, and the announcers for San Francisco even said it, they're like, it looks like he might be going through a period of dead arm, that he's not willing to throw his fastball, which if that's the case, okay, phantom IL him now. Like, you need him for the stretch, especially if you're going to go on this kind of haggardest run right now. You need to put him on the IL, make something up, back tightness. My arm is, I banged it and I have a contusion that needs to be healed, whatever, figure something out. But, we've seen the phantom IL stints work for teams. It's about time that it's time to put a phantom IL stint in there if he needs it for the dead arm. I mean, Philadelphia didn't do a phantom IL stint, but they skipped a start for Taijuan Walker because his arm looked like it was going through dead arm. So you need to do that. But as of right now, that NL wild card has become Philadelphia and then everybody else at this moment, because Philadelphia has been playing so well and nobody else is keeping pace. I mean, the closest team is Chicago. They're 3.5 games back off Philadelphia. So, it's an interesting wild card race. I would like to see, obviously I want Philadelphia to continue doing their thing, but I thought it would be,
I'm not surprised.
Well, yeah, right. But I was very surprised to see that. But San Francisco falling off the map. Jock Peterson's not hitting anymore right now. It's home run or bust, which is basically worthless in that lineup, unfortunately. Pat Bailey, the catcher, he came up and gave him a spark. He's all right, but not great. Sable, who's also a catcher, came up. They now have him out in the outfield. He looks like he's lost his all heck out there. So trying to do the Varsho type thing, it's like, no, that doesn't work. Varsho's stupid athletic. There's a difference. It's a wild time. If I had to say nowadays, if the trends continue, San Francisco now falls out of favor with me in the wild card race. I think that they will miss if they continue this kind of trend that they're on. So they're on a very downward turn. They also are now negative in run differential, which is definitely not a good sign for them.
So
who is your low, sir, or team is your low, whichever you chose?
Yeah. So I know off air I mentioned a certain team that is very near and dear to me. However, as I was doing a little bit of research, there is one that I think really deserves it now. My honorable mention is Cleveland. You know,
this is for those that I'm interrupting you, and I apologize, but for those of you that don't know, he literally buried the lead and told me he was going to pick Cleveland as his low team this week. So this is literally an audible in the last 5 minutes. He's literally pulled. So I'm very interested to see where this goes. Honorable mention is definitely for Cleveland and for justification reasons, but I'm curious now.
They have a negative run differential of -10 in their last 10 games. They're 4-6. They did take the series from Toronto. They battled back yesterday, eventually gave the lead up again, which is almost to be expected at this point because the pitching is just so inconsistent. But they battled back and ended up beating them 10-7. So it shows that they still can score a lot of runs, which is why I'm not convinced until they show me throughout the rest of this year and then into next year that this is like a sophomore slump season. My concern with them is Francona. There's been a lot of discussions coming out in articles from baseball people smarter and more in the know-how than I am that Tito is considering retiring or at least walking away from managing at the moment, which I can't really blame him with how this season has gone. But the team that I am down on is the Yankees. They have cemented themselves as they're not going to make the playoffs. There's no way. They're 11 games back now. So sure, mathematically, they're not eliminated. In their last 10 games, they're 2-8. They have a run differential of -23. So Cleveland is actually scoring more runs than what they are, which kind of blows my mind with the people that they've got in their lineup, but they have no clubhouse chemistry. I mean, another team that is in that same predicament that very easily could be the team in the low this week is the White Sox, who continue to just absolutely crap the bed and allow all this negativity to mount on top of one another. But I mean, the fact that the Yankees are supposed to be so good, they have great pitching, and maybe this is just a fluke year that's going to be really bad for them. But no one saw them being in fifth place, 6 games under 500 with a -23 run differential with the bats that they have. Sure, it's a lot of kind of not basket cases and not like I'm going to test this out and give this guy a shot. It's guys that are either past their prime or just not fitting into the New York Yankee culture. But there is a very legit chance that if the Yankee season continues the way it is for the rest of August and then September through the end of the season, that they break their streak. I didn't realize it, but they haven't had a losing season in 30 years. So if they finish under 500 this year, it'll be the first time since 1993 that they finished, or 92 that they finished under 500. Which with
I knew that I just saw a stat recently that this is the first time they've been under 500 this late in the year since 95.
Yep.
So
actually, it might be the 80s. I think it might be the 80s.
Could be. I didn't check that hard. Yeah, it's something like that. Regardless, it's been a minute. So let's put it this way. Normally New York is very into baseball and like has a pretty good baseball following all through the summer. And then obviously when football season starts, it's kind of a mixed bag and things like that. And nobody cares about baseball season in New York right now for either side. They're both flushing the toilet on the year. It's that sad. This is the first time in my remembering that there will not be unless a miracle occurs here for the Yankees, I write the Mets off. There will not be a New York team in a playoffs that I can remember in a long time. So
Yeah.
that's just a wild thing for me to even think about. But yeah, they're deserving to be your low. I was thinking about them too myself. The culture in that team, that locker room, there's something off. I don't know if it's Boone. We mentioned Boone needs to get fired. He's awful. I don't know if it's Boone necessarily all the way. I don't know if that team is not something about that team's not a team. There's some sort of locker room cancer in there that's killing it.
Yep.
I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's a player. I really don't know if it might not be Boone himself. He could very well be it. I mean, look, I'll give you a classic example. Look at last year, the Phillies, when they fired Girardi. Girardi was the cancer in that room. You get rid of him, all of a sudden the team all of a sudden comes back to life. So it's an interesting thing. I would be curious to see what would happen if Judge had that chance to go on his contract again. Would he have signed to be in New York again, or would he have left to go to San Francisco? I mean, yeah, because that was basically who the two teams were. I mean, yeah, San Diego made their pitch, but it was really those two. So, and honestly, San Diego's looking like a basket case in their own right. So I think they need to figure out their self before they worry about bringing in anybody else.
Yeah.
In that regard, I know a lot of people keep on linking the Yankees to Ohtani as well. I would bet money that's not happening. Like almost,
absolutely.
I would be willing to bet my house it's not happening for that. So, with that going on, but yeah, no, definitely deserves to be on your low. As well, that's wild to think about how bad they are. Another honorable mention I'll mention here as well that could have been on my list because I picked the Giants because I felt they were more prevalent. The LA Angels have full on just disintegrated. And have you seen you sent me the TikTok, never mind, the just the reports coming out of there of all these guys being hurt. It's just wild, some of the accusations that are being put out there. There
are quite a few teams in baseball that have some sort of boogaloo going on within the front office, within the coaching staff, within players, player development, scout. I don't know what it is, but just as a whole, the team, the White Sox have a chronic issue. I mean, you look at what's the owner's name? Right, Larry Reinsdorf, something like that. Firing Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, I think, was the GM. They were out on the field for batting practice, if I remember correctly, and then I think either by game time or during it or a little after, they were gone. Then you look at New York, Cashman's got to go, Boone's got to go. Honestly, maybe it's time for the Steinbrenner family to not own the Yankees. I mean, for us and for so many just baseball fans in general, let alone Yankees fans, it would be not earth-shattering, but really weird to not have a Steinbrenner own the team.
Yeah, but a Steinbrenner hasn't run it with an iron fist like he used to.
Like George did.
Like George
Hal's
did.
not George.
No. God, no. Nor would George, I think, work in this day and age either. But
I mean, in the PC culture that society is now, and it's just the way that things happen. You know, he wouldn't have ever worked out, but Boone would have been gone probably in the first or second year. Because I mean, a classic example, look at how many times the Yankees hired and fired, what was it, Billy Martin? The Yankees were successful under Billy, and they were fun to watch. Well, the clips made it look like they were fun to watch, and a lot of analysts said they were, and Billy's just a nutcase in himself. But the White Sox, the Yankees, and the Angels all need to have some big overhauls in the organization as a whole before they're really going to kind of move forward and get back to contention.
I think this is the time. So Artie Moreno was rumored, had sources say he was looking to selling the team last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then nothing ever came of it. I think he had second thoughts, and I think his just
Yep.
love of the whole being an owner came into effect.
Mm-hmm.
I think now it's going to definitely happen. I think the public unrest is going to come. It's a
Yep.
shame because if there's quite a bit of Angels fans out there, and you've wasted Trout. I can't
Yep.
believe. See, this is where I question why Trout resigned there, because Trout could have been gone. Trout, I know that there's probably some other stuff in the background, and I don't need to know about it. And there's probably some personal stuff, and he might have just been comfortable. But Trout has not been Trout for almost 3 years now, maybe. He's
Mm-hmm.
been constantly hurt. It's been a shame to see because he's not himself. We can't see Ohtani. I can't see Ohtani resigning now. I mean, it's after this. This is now. See, this is the real sad part about the whole Ohtani thing. And for those that don't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know if you haven't been living under a rock, but Ohtani is found to have a partial tear in his UCL again in his right shoulder, which means usually we're on the way for Tommy John yet again. This would be his second bout with Tommy John.
Mm-hmm.
One bout coming back's hard enough. 2 bouts is like, you better be a freaking superhero. And we always call him a superhero, so he could be the only one that could handle it. But I mean, you'd have to be nuts to think that he could go out there and probably pitch to the same level. So I think that this will end possibly his chances of being a two-way player from now on. I think instead of getting the monster two-way deal we were going to see this offseason, I think he signs something on the lines of he'll get 400 million because he's just that good. Probably around 400 million. He'll get a 2-year opt-out because this 400 million, you know that if you're signing him for this 400 million, and it's going to be the 400 million, it's going to be over like 12 years, but he's going to have an opt-out clause in it. The 400 million for these 2 years, and then he has the opt-out, is going to be to see if he can even pitch again. And if he can't, then he becomes just he could play the field as well, but strictly almost a DH.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be an absolute sin to watch this happen. And it's because the organization is lazy. There have been players now, multiple players that have come out and said this organization was too cheap to get Albert Pujols a specialized treadmill. This organization was not feeding them the correct foods. They told guys, if you want to have food before you go start your workouts, go stop by Chick-fil-A and have a sandwich before you eat. Like, that stuff like in spring training we're talking about. This is stuff that cannot be acceptable. I don't care what it is. If any of these things are found to be true, MLB should be kicking Artie Moreno out at that point, because you're just endangering your premier player. Both of them, I mean, really, play for this team. They cannot make the playoffs. They cannot stay healthy for anything, either of them. And it's because of this other stuff that's starting to come out. It's ridiculous. Artie Moreno, I'm sorry, my guy. I appreciate you. You're the nicest dude in the world. You're done. You didn't put the right people in there. Front office is all fired, in my opinion. Gone. Every single body out of there. All those trades you just made, they're doomed. Everything there. I want the Phillies to trade back and get back Mookie Moniak and Logan O'Hoppe. Get them out of there. I don't want to see them suffer in that organization, because I honestly love both those guys, and I was sad that they got dealt, but they were necessary deals. But no way, no how can you, as a owner of an MLB franchise, forget the league, they should be doing this themselves, but stance flag in the ground, there is no way you should be permitting your team to be run this dysfunctionally to ruin 2 of the best players ever in the history of the game, ever, to be wasted. Probably the most premier 5-tool player we will ever see, in Trout, and the phenom in a two-way superstar that is able to be so good at both, to now that phenom is better be out of here. I hope he's gone. Like, he needs to get out of there tomorrow. If Trout was any smart, he'd say, get me out of here too, because he needs to get out of there for his health. Or he better just enjoy the paycheck and just ride it out, because he's never going to win anything there. I don't care.
Who's your center fielder?
Brandon Marsh. Guess what? Brandon Marsh, Christian Pache, or Alejandro Johan Rojas, which is sad because I love all three of those guys. But if I can get all three of them to play the outfield, and I can somehow still get Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber's bat in there somehow, I'll do it.
I mean, it wouldn't be that bad of a deal if you moved Brandon Marsh over to left and traded for a Mr. Mike Trout.
Yeah.
And threw him in center. I mean, or take it off of Trout, throw him in left, and say, hey, we like what you did in Anaheim, but we want you to be able to play for a while. So, take a load off, go to left, go to right.
Yeah.
Because Bryce has first down. I know Philly loves Reese, but I've seen a lot of like TikToks and other videos from fans and from not much so analysts, but Bryce Harper is so good, and I think he could very well be criminally underrated. Now, that's not to say that he's the best player that's ever played the game, but
he threatened to be my hot player this week too. But I felt like the Seattle had to be mentioned.
I feel like the Phillies are Bryce's team. I mean,
they are.
It's keep the face of your franchise healthy, make sure he's content, and you keep him in the loop. He's your first baseman. Keep him there. And then do whatever you want with Schwarber. I know that Schwarber has found a home in Philadelphia. I feel like the Phillies, if they that's way hypothetical. Phillies get Mike Trout, you can part with Kyle Schwarber, because while Schwarber hits it out of the yard with no effort, he strikes out so much. I don't think that he is a make or break player for Philadelphia, because they have so many pieces offensively and what he does not bring defensively.
That's the biggest problem, is his defense. He is the lowest rated, I think definitely lowest rated left fielder, but if not lowest rated outfielder in the metric. So it's not good. But alas,
we were on the same page there. That was our high and low for the week. We'll go ahead onto the final segment.
I do have one quick thing of breaking news for you here, because I feel like you deserve some credit here, because you picked this out. The players of the week were just announced for the AL and the NL, and the NL player of the week was Mookie Betts. So I feel like it's only right that you get credit for picking not only the hot player there of the week, but MLB agrees with you. So there you go.
I'm glad
the AL player was Adam Duvall. So
I'm glad Big Brother gave MLB the ability to kind of hack into our laptops, and they said, you know what, we feel bad for this goof. Let's go ahead and kind of give him a little bit of a thumbs up. Yeah. But we'll go ahead and segue to our final topic, which is our Balk Talk. I'm going to go ahead and lead this one off. I know this is Richie's segment, and every now and again I throw him out there. The reason I'm going to lead it off is because you already actually answered my first one. Shohei is not making $1 billion. Balk or walk? You already said no. Obviously,
well, no, he's definitely not anymore. That was kind of the analyst stuff that I found was that I see is a lot of people are saying he'll make somewhere around the lines of 10 years plus with 400 million with a 2-year opt out, so he can try to get back into it and pitch again.
I was going to say, I don't think he is out of pitching again, because he is such a good pitcher still. I think what you're going to see, I think he'll get 4 to 450 over whatever amount of time. I do think that he's going to have some opt-outs. I think most, honestly, free agent contracts probably from here on out are going to contain a lot of opt-outs for whatever reason or whatever the game of baseball is going through at that time. But I think Ohtani will pitch again. I think you will see teams, though, put precautions in there which what that would be the biggest thing, I think it'll be insurance clauses, because if you look at Strasburg, he's since retired. He's going to retire, but the Nationals effed up royally and didn't put any insurance on that contract. So whilst he signed that
whole thing,
yep, he signed that extension after 2019 when they won the World Series. Obviously, 2020 was the COVID shortened season, and since then he has barely thrown a ball, and now he never will again, which is really, really sad and heartbreaking to hear. But in the last few years, he hasn't pitched at all, and they're going to still have to pay him 26 million roughly, I think.
Yeah, he still has, I think he has 26
years?
million for the next 2 years, and then it drops to 19 million based on deferred money for the next 5 after that. So I mean, Strasburg's set, he's good. But it's a case there. I am going to counter you with this on the opt-outs. You may see some, but you also may see some people not. I completely agree with you on the insurance. That stuff's definitely going to have to happen. But the opt-outs, I'm wondering if we're going to see not as many as you think of, because I'm just going to use the last examples of free agency we've had. Harper has no opt-out. Correa had an opt-out. Then look what happened. He opted out thinking he would get a much bigger payday. He actually took a pay cut to go back to the Twins off that opt-out because of the market that happened to him with that injury that wasn't really an injury, but people don't really like it. They're worried about it. So he lost money on that. Trey Turner does not have an opt-out. The other people do. I mean, it's going to be a mix. So it's a risk taking that opt-out, because while you could be good, and I mean, let's be honest, if Trey Turner had a 1-year opt-out after this year, he's not going to take it, because like this year was awful. Granted, he doesn't want to leave. He's very happy. He wanted to be stable. And that's what a lot of these guys want, is stability. Especially if they're in that position to ask for it. They want stability for a long period of time. You know, Harper wanted the stability for 13 years. Turner wanted it for 10. Even the guys that want it for 4 or 5, like Schwarber, Castellanos, that aren't going to get the max deals, but still they want that kind of stability. Those are all keys in that. So I would say it's going to be a hit or miss with that.
Okay.
So that's my only counterpoint to that, but I completely agree with you. The insurance is big. And in regards to Strasburg, who, again, very sad to hear he has to retire with everything that happened. There was a stat, and it was just mind-boggling to me. 2019, he pitched 32 innings, roughly, in the playoffs of 2019. Since 2019, he has pitched 32 innings up to this point after that extension. It is possibly, if not the worst, arguably one of the worst contract extensions. The only 2 other ones that you can argue are up there are both by the Angels in Albert Pujols,
Josh Hamilton,
and well, I guess you could put 3 up there: Josh Hamilton, and I would say right now Anthony Rendon. So
I think I'll add a 4th one by the Angels: CJ Wilson.
And CJ
didn't
Wilson
resemble the Rangers pitcher that we saw. But I'll go to my final one. I only have one more, and it kind of is brought on by the Ohtani thing. I've talked about the astronomical amount of Tommy John surgeries that have occurred, whether it was to established players, superstars, or minor leaguers that a lot of people haven't heard of. There have just been so many different arm injuries, whether it was to the UCL or to the forearm, to whatever it's got to do with a pitching mechanic. I feel like it's a lot of it may have been brought on by these rule changes. So I found an article from thedatajocks.com. It's from April 8th of this year, so it's a little bit older, but I was kind of curious as to what the average length of baseball games were throughout, the sport's history. And from what the article says, The 1920s, the average length was an hour and 55 minutes. 30s, it was 3 minutes longer. In the 40s, 2 hours and 7 minutes. 50s, 2 hour and 14. 60s, 2 hours and 34 minutes. The 70s, 2 hours and 33 minutes. The 80s were the same. 90s, it jumped to 2 hours and 49 minutes. The 2000s was 2 hours and 56 minutes. The 2010s were 2 hours and 54 minutes. And then the 2020s, before the pace of play initiatives, it was at a whopping 3 hours and 4 minutes, which,
yeah,
for guys like you and I, we'll sit there and we'll watch it. But to the average fan, especially in a day and age where attention spans really aren't that high, that is a lot. That's where I do give a little bit of, I'll throw, why am I blanking on the commissioner's name?
Not Bud Selig.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Manfred.
Rob Manfred. Yeah.
When I will give Manfred a bone that I understand with the pitch clock and whatnot, but between they have to come set. I mean, a lot of you look back at it in the 20s and it was under 2 hours. Guys weren't blowing their arms out like they are now. Obviously, it's a lot of arm angles with contorting your arm in an unnatural way that it's not meant to go for off-speed pitches or whatever, as well as guys like Chapman or a throwback named Joel Zamaya. Some of these guys that just absolutely torque and throw as hard as they can and inevitably blow their arm out. Although some people's arms may not just be built the same way that others are. But when you've got all these established guys, which I think a majority, I don't have the exact statistic, but a lot of these arm injuries are coming from guys that have been established MLB players. So they've had a certain routine for a while, and then they have this pitch clock thrown at them. I think the pickoff rule, that's not really going to affect too much, but the pitch clock, I think, would, because okay, maybe they took a little bit long, obviously we're talking about just seconds at the end of the day.
Sure.
But now maybe it is messing with their arm a little bit. So balk or walk, let me pull it up here. Balk or walk, the rule changes specifically to the pitch clock are the reason for the astronomical amount of Tommy John surgeries or just arm injuries for all these pitchers.
Balk, big time balk. And it's funny because this might be the first time in history that I completely balk this question. That not that I think that any of what you said is uncredited or anything like that. I think it's all very valid points. I think we're in the day and age where these guys are basically, if you want to make it to the majors and you're a pitcher and you need to throw 95 plus to be a standout, which is kind of crazy at this point now.
Yeah.
You're basically asking your arm to be a ticking time bomb. And unfortunately, I think that's part of the game at this point. Now, what I will say is you do have your pitchers that do it the other way. I mean, you see guys like Rich Hill, who has pitched forever. I mean, he's older and definitely does not have that velocity, but he can dot everything he needs to dot. Now, is he perfect? No, he's not who I would model my game after. He's also 43 or 44 at this point. He's definitely up there. So like, I'm not surprised, but you look at these guys that are throwing this, they make adjustments. The guys that are really good that have lasted make adjustments. I'll give you an example. Verlander, when he came onto the scene, dude would throw 99 to 100 in his sleep. Like, can throw it. Now, he did have Tommy John, but he was able to get his numbers back elevated to that. What you do notice now is he doesn't do it as often. He's content with 93 to 95 and dotting it and working on his off-speed stuff. Now, his off-speed stuff is not as severe. It's it's just a lot of changes of speeds. He's actually worked on a lot more changeups. He has worked on that slurve sweeper, whatever you want to call that thing, which has actually, I've been seeing more and more, like a lot of these guys are going to that sweeper ball now because it's less torque on that arm. So all these things, obviously less than a slider, for example. So no, I don't think the pitch clock is the reason. I think these guys are deciding whether they want to do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another classic example is you have to decide if you want to continue to throw that way. Craig Kimbrell has been down in velocity recently in years past. His LA days, he was topping out at 93, 94, which was getting him smashed because then his knuckle curve doesn't really have the movement off of it that off of 98, 97.
Yeah.
Well, he's built up and has started to throw 96, 97 again this year with Philadelphia. And now the breaking ball dances more and everything seems to fit. And he's finding the right arm slot to do it and not hurting himself.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to see these trends of certain guys will make these adjustments. Scherzer is another example. Guy used to throw way harder than he does now. He still can top it out. I'm not saying he can't throw hard, but he's usually averaging in that like 94 range. He's not going 97. He might throw a high fastball and throw some extra juice on it and throw it up and out of the zone to get you to chase it at 97. But he's trying to get that elevated. That's why it's going harder. So I balk at it that it's the rules, because if you notice, a lot of these guys that are getting hurt are the guys that have gotten hurt in the past. And I hate to be that way because I'd love to say that it's not all their faults. DeGrom has not been able to stay healthy. He's my first example. This guy can't stay healthy ever.
Yeah.
I mean, and he throws blistering hard. And we all can agree, when he's on the hill and he's healthy, he's the most disgusting pitcher there is in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's coming at a cost. It will be very interesting to see how he does coming back from the second Tommy John.
Yeah.
Because I think he needs to make an adjustment. We've seen how Noah Syndergaard's acted after just one Tommy John. And it's a shame. And I know he recently got DFA'd by the Guardians. And for obvious reasons, I mean, the guy is just a shell. He needs to, he just can't figure it out. And he just keeps leaving the ball over the middle of the plate. And it's just getting tattooed. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me. I think there's a lot of guys that are working on figuring that out. I think it's definitely a case of they have to get used to it. But at this point, I don't think it's the cause of injuries. Mm-hmm. I think it's definitely something that people want to use as a blame tool, which is understandable. And I get it. And I get there's certain things that you have to change, the come set, all that stuff. I'm with you on that part. The no quick pitch, all that jazz. Mm-hmm. But I think that more it has to do with these guys need to either accept the fact that they're on the time clock and they don't know when their time's up, which is the scarier part. So it's a ticking time bomb, or they need to learn how to adjust and throw less and get their arm slot in a way that it will not destroy your arm and you won't need it. I mean, some guys are blessed also with a rubber arm. Aaron Nola is a classic example of that. He is blessed with a rubber arm. The guy 90% of the time throws something off speed, but he doesn't get hurt. That's just luck. Honestly, we're all waiting for the day. But with the amount of innings, I also think that these guys are taking on slightly more innings than they're used to, or their innings might be increased certain ones. So it's a conglomerate of everything. So I'm sure the pitch clock has a small part to do with it, but I don't think it's the prevalent issue.
Okay.
We keep on seeing these guys coming up here. Paul Skeens is on his way up. He's flying up the ranks right now because he's throwing hard. He's 22, or 23. What happens when he turns 27? Can he do this? Can his arm withstand a full season in the MLB? It's 162 games. Now, he's obviously not throwing every single one of them, but
Yeah.
There's a lot of innings there, much more than college or high school or anything you've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
It's why you see this problem. So I'd be curious to see, but
Okay.
that would be, I would balk you on this because I would say that.
So then what are your balks?
So we're going to start with this one because you kind of led me into it. So I'm going to say this. It's not really a balk or walk. It kind of is, but I have it as balk or walk, but you're going to kind of have to describe it yourself. Balk or walk, Tito retires after this year.
I'm at right now. I'm going to say I'm going to walk with you.
Interesting. Okay.
He, between his health, not that he's really sick right now with anything, or he's had issues with some limb or appendage, but between his health and just how this season has gone, it's been a lot for him to have to deal with. I have a feeling that he doesn't retire, but that is the Guardians fan in me being terrified that we're not going to have a manager like Terry Francona. Now, granted, I would hope that if and when he does retire, that we can hire Sandy Alomar. I think I've said that once or twice on the show.
I was going to ask you, if he does retire, who would you want? So there you go,
Sandy. I would want Sandy because he understands the Cleveland culture. He knows the team, and he's been with Tito since 2013. So I think it would be a great replacement for Francona. I would still be nervous if it were Sandy because he's unproven really outside of a couple games when Manny Acta got fired. But I mean, I remember when the Rays hired Kevin Cash. I was like, why on earth are they hiring? I mean, I know he was a good coach for Cleveland, but he's unproven as a manager. I don't know what they're doing. And look what they've become under him. And look how they started this year. And I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. And they're going to be a playoff contender for the next several years, probably. And I mean, if I were Tampa Bay, why would you ever? I would, at the moment at least, put Cash in Tito's position of, hey, as long as you want to be here, the job's yours. So,
and look at how well he's done with handling that whole Wander situation. I mean, that could have tore that clubhouse apart. And yet not that they've been red hot, but they've been basically staying steady the whole way.
But I'll walk with you on it just because I don't know whether my gut feeling is me holding on to hope or what that Tito retires.
Okay, fair enough. So Boston has been in the news recently. Obviously, Mookie just came by there recently, but Boston has been really making a push recently to try and get into the playoffs. So I'm curious of your thoughts here, because as of today, they are 4.5 games out of the last wild card spot, only trailing Toronto by 2.5 games as well, or 2 games, I'm sorry, as well. Balk or walk, Boston makes the playoffs in the 3rd wild card spot.
I'm going to balk you on it. I haven't been convinced enough that they are here, that they can make a legit push. I mean, when you look at the competition, Toronto's the biggest one, and I think Cleveland kind of exposed some of their weakness. I mean, we all love Vladdy, but he just he seems different. He's not a good defender at all at first base. He's one of the worst
defender. Actually, he is ranked the worst.
Yes, and I mean, he is a power threat, but I'm not entirely scared of that bat in the lineup. But then they're the only team that's above Boston right now in terms of fighting for a wild card spot that isn't currently in it. Behind them are the Angels. I just don't see it. No. I want to, but I don't. Behind the Angels are the Yankees. They're not going anywhere. And then behind the Yankees are Cleveland. And Cleveland has a
better chance at the Central than they do at the wild card.
At this point, their only chance, in my opinion, is the Central, because They're 11 and a half back from the third wild card spot, I believe, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yes.
That's just too high of a hill to climb.
Yeah.
And even then, if they win the Central, they're still going to be in the wild card series. So it's almost a moot point. But
Right.
obviously, all you got to do is just make it in, and you're there. I will give it to Boston. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They did lose their last game, but their run differential is plus 42. So they're not playing badly. I need to see a little bit more proof. So currently, Monday, August 28th at 6:11 p.m. No, ask me on I'm bad at math. So whatever the date is next week, which it looks like it'll be the 4th of September when we record our next episode.
Labor Day.
Labor Day, yeah. I might say yes, they are.
No. I think the worst thing that happened to Boston is the fact that Seattle got just as hot at the same time they did.
Yep.
Which just makes the AL West a 3-team race, as well as puts them all three in the wild card front running, which just makes it worse for them. So instead of the 3 teams that we predicted coming out of the East, because you and I both did that, we might have 3 teams come out of the West, which would have taken us all through a loop because we would not have planned that at all.
Yep.
So you mentioned Mookie earlier, but Mookie and Freddie Freeman have staked their claim for the MVP award this past week and basically this season as a whole, along with Ronald Acuna. And then you can add Matt Olson in there as well, who has been his teammate in there as well. So this one's not really a buck or walk. It's more of a, you make your pick here. If I gave you a choice of Acuna, like we had said for the most part of the year, or the field, who are you taking for the
Such
MVP
a hard
race?
question.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm gonna.
I don't make Bach
go
talks easy, man. That's the point.
No, I'm gonna go with the field because
I would agree.
Because at the beginning of this year, I mean, Matt Olson has been a monster just as much as Acuna has, but Acuna was just on a level of his own. Not that he is necessarily in terms of regress so horrifically, but there are so many more people that have joined him, even just the 4 names above him, that are going to create more of a conversation. I don't think it's cut and dry anymore. So I'm going to say the field.
I agree with you. That was always my thought as well on this whole thing. Was I really don't trust. I would normally have taken him in a heartbeat. I would have taken Acuna, but at this point, it's gotten so narrow viewed to being between, those 3 have kind of thrust themselves into the situation that I don't know how you could argue it. I mean, at this point, Acuna is kind of tapered off. Not that he's had and I say tapered off like he's like fell off the face of the earth. No, he's just not as smoking hot as he was. I mean, J-Rod's way hotter than he is at this point. But J-Rod had such a slow start to the year. I just would say that I would definitely take the field as well, as it got a lot closer.
Yeah.
And Freddie Freeman is that quiet guy that always seems to just stick his head in there when you don't think that he's going to be around, and seems to always make that case. And you look at his numbers and you go, I can't argue these facts. So I would agree. Last one for you with this. So all things we're presuming, obviously we're not to the playoffs yet. Plenty of things can happen. Plenty of things can change. But at this point in time, some of these teams are starting to think about their playoff rotations and starting to think who's going to be in their playoff rotations. Some of those teams, LA's got to be thinking about it at this point. Tampa obviously has been thinking about it for a bit. So has Baltimore, has got to be thinking about it for a little bit now. And then Philadelphia also has been thinking about it. And it comes to this question for you because it's a very big question that's been actually going on in the city of brotherly love is Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola has had a really up and down year. He's given up more home runs this year than he has ever given up. And his stats are not the best at all. So just to give you an idea, Aaron Nola this year is 12-8. He's got a 4.30 ERA over 27 games. Pitched 167 innings. Fine. 174 Ks. That's pretty good, right on par. And a whip of 1.12, which is not the best. Over his past 15 games, he's 8-4, 3.98 ERA, a 15-game stint there. With 92 innings, he's had 80 hits, given up 80 hits, 41 earned runs. The walks, not so much. Again, a whip of 1.11. Over his last 7, his whip is elevated, as well as is his ERA at 4.39. If you are Philadelphia, with how inconsistent Aaron Nola has been, balk or walk, Aaron Nola should not get the ball in a playoff game. Obviously, Wheeler's your ace. He's going first game. But obviously, if you're talking wild card series, there's that game too. So the question that has been going on is balk or walk. Aaron Nola does not get the start in any of your playoff games.
I will walk you on the fact that he doesn't start. Obviously, you don't want to like burn a bridge and keep him off of a roster because he still has helped you out this year like he did last year. I would put him in the bullpen in a long relief role, maybe in a back end role, but the Phillies don't need a back end piece. I mean, with Kimbrel as the closer and how the rest of that bullpen has worked, heaven forbid the starter doesn't look like he's got it that night. You can yank him out and throw Nola in there, eat up 3 or 4 innings, and you're good. So I would put him in the bullpen for all of the playoffs, let alone the wild card.
So that's interesting that you say that. Here's the one thing that is the argument to that. While I like where your head's at. Obviously, I agree. You don't take him off the roster. He's a very good pitcher. Like when he's got it figured out, he's a great pitcher. Obviously, his last game, he proved he's a great pitcher. He pitched a 1-hit shutout against St. Louis yesterday. Aaron Nola has never come out of the bullpen. Aaron Nola has never done anything in the bullpen. He does not know this. The theory is what you would do in this situation is you would still start Nola. And in my opinion, I actually start Nola as well. I know I said the question, how I phrased it, but I wanted you to get the actual phrasing, how it's been told. I would actually balk myself. I would give Nola the start. I would put Ranger in the bullpen as that exact role that you're mentioning. Because Ranger has come out of the bullpen and knows how to handle that, I think he would be who I put in that long relief role. I would have my 3 as of right now be Nola, or not Nola, Wheeler, Nola. And then I actually would be in a toss-up situation where I would put either Taijuan Walker or Michael Lorenzen in at number 3. The key is if you can put Taijuan Walker in there and Taijuan Walker actually gives you what you need, you can put Lorenzen into the bullpen as well because he's come out of the bullpen before. So yeah, I think that would be my ultimate dream is to put those that way. But it's been a curious question that a lot of people have been asking because Nola has been so up and down this year. He's been very 2009 Cole Hamels for the Phillies this year. And I think a lot of that has to be he gave everything he had to that World Series run. And as he should have, it's understandable. I don't think a Phantom IL will work for him. I think he just needs to pitch it out, and I think he needs to gain confidence. He needs to prove that he can continue to do it. Now, his last 2 games, he's had a win against St. Louis where he pitched 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 earned run. And then he pitched 7 innings in his start before that. He pitched 7 innings against San Francisco with 7 hits, 2 earned runs, and 5 Ks as well. So you'd love to think that that's the curve maybe taking on here and we're starting to turn the corner, but it's been a really hit or miss season. So it's been one of those hard things that has come about this year, but I had to let you, I wanted to see a non-biased opinion on it because there's a lot of people that are kind of confused, as am I. What do you do with them this year?
The one thing I will say is when it comes to the playoffs, you do see pitchers that have not been bullpen guys get put in the bullpen because
that's true.
You're not going to use a 5-man rotation really in a best of 3 series, a best of 5, even a best of 7.
Yep.
So, like, I mean, John Lester in 2016 had 2 starts in the World Series and then came out of the bullpen in game 7. So not only was it something he wasn't I don't think he's ever been a relief pitcher. He didn't play that whole postseason out of the bullpen. So, but then again, that's a completely different situation. That's game 7, win or go home.
We saw Matt Cain do it back in the day too.
Yeah.
For San Francisco. Yeah.
And to play devil's advocate to my own point, he didn't exactly look 100% sharp, but he also, that was the tail end of the season. So,
right.
I think that was a great question. That's a very good point. This was a good episode. It's good to be back. Talking to you, Richie, talking to the viewers on the YouTube. I feel like a senior citizen calling it the YouTube, but I'm just going to keep saying it now. And for those of you that are going to end up hearing this on the podcast, we want to thank you all for joining us on another edition of What's on Second, a true baseball podcast. We want to encourage you to go hit up the Instagram, as long as we have Twitter as well. That way you can reach out to us, let us know what you thought of the episode, positive, negatives, what you want to see us talk about. If there's any sort of idea you guys have that we can incorporate into the show, we'd love to hear it. Please spread the word on the show. We want to have as many people listening and watching as possible, and we will see you out there